Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 150 episodes of mead making education, information, and entertainment. More than 100 guests have stopped by the Mead House, professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey, and brewers just like you and me have all visited to share their knowledge. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. You can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House, mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss. Well, I was standing on the top rung of a 20-foot extension ladder that I had placed on a 6-foot stack of old pallets, trimming the dead palm fronds from the palm tree in the backyard. A thought occurred to me. I should go ahead and order that new fermenter I've been talking about for some time now. So while hanging on to the chainsaw with one hand, I worked myself down the ladder with the other and called it in. A little more on that later. In the meantime, hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 207. Hey, the Mead House is located every place you can possibly think of. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the popular ones, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, you can check them out on the front page of the website, themeadhouse.com. In this episode, segment 1, my new fermenter. Segment 2, Jeff and Ryan's got some 411 on the Iron B21. And in segment 3, part 2 of the Social Club. And we pick up from where we left off last week. We'll explain that a little bit later on. But hey, segment 1, or before we get to that, see, I'm trying to get ahead of myself. I'm so eager to talk about my new fermenter. All that and more here at the Mead House. But hey, first, we like to send a great thank you out to all of our key holders out there. You guys keep the Mead House podcast free. And you can become a Mead House key holder and help support the show for as little as $2 a month. That's all it takes. We've got some great thank you gifts we can send out to you, plus a listing of key holder only content. If you get on over to patreon.com, you can just search for the Mead House or just click on the link in the show notes, and we certainly appreciate it very much. What are we drinking tonight? I gotta get my notepad here because Ryan, I took some notes rather than sit here and sip on, these 2 glasses. I thought I'd save you some time. So, what I'm drinking tonight, double fisting it. Tonight is bourbon night in the first glass. Hard to find, man. This is another one like Blanton's. Very difficult. Of course, this may depend on where you live. But in my neck of the woods, Blanton's is such a small distribution. A lot of stores out here are lucky to get 2, maybe 3 bottles. And not every liquor store is going to get them. Some of the bigger chains, Bevmo, Total Wine, they'll get 3 or 4 bottles, but they're gone within 24 hours. The one I'm drinking tonight is H.L. Weller. Okay, now this is the original. It's the special reserves, the green label. This is the original wheated bourbon. What they've done is they've replaced the rye with wheat. Now, a lot of bourbons are made with corn, rye, barley, and maybe one other grain. Some of them, if you go to the websites, they'll tell you what the mash bill is. Not quite the percentages. That's, kind of a hidden secret. But they'll at least tell you what grains that they use. Well, H.L. Weller, like I said, has replaced the rye of their mash bill with wheat. Now, I'm not one. I don't care for wheated beers. I've tried lots of them. I haven't found one yet that I'm satisfied with. Most taste like a dried up hayfield. Some taste like the grass you just freshly cut. Not quite into that. But this bourbon, now there's some bourbon, there's other wheated bourbons out there too. Some, again, taste like a hayfield. But H.L. Weller, the Special Reserve, is really good. I really like this. It's very on the nose. You've got a very sweet nose, a little bit of light brown sugar, some honey notes. On the palate, you get a little butterscotch. It's very smooth, very light, kind of a wood finish. You get the caramels in there a little bit, the smoothness coming from the wheat. And on the finish, you get a little bit of that fresh hay, on the palate. If you've ever chewed on a grass stem, like we used to do out on the ranch, you get that little taste of dried grass or dried hay in your mouth. It ain't bad. So it's a little bit like that, but it's not like chewing on a bale of hay for sure. This is really good. A little bit of honeysuckle there at the end too. So H.L. Weller, the original wheated bourbon. That's what I'm drinking in the one hand. And I'm sorry, Ryan. I gotta take a sip. Damn it. Mm-mm. Wow, that's good stuff. All right, in the second hand. This is kind of a husband-wife project here, and I've tasted it before on the show. This is a mead. It's just a straight-up traditional mead that Raven and I wanted to put together. Raven's urging. This thing, God, is probably at least a year and a half old now. Still sitting in the carboy, the very last glass carboy. Everything else has been transferred to kegs. This is still sitting in the very last glass 5-gallon carboy. It's I guess semi-sweet, and because there is a little bit of sweetness to it, but it doesn't last very long. And it was finished on American oak. This is made with wildflower honey, by the way, local wildflower honey. It was finished on American oak medium toast first for probably, 3-4 months maybe. We pulled that out, and then we put in some Hungarian oak, which gives it a really nice mouthfeel and aroma. And so this was, like I said, made with wildflower honey. It's a semi-sweet. The mouthfeel is really nice with that wood in it. It finishes very smooth. It's about 14%, but you get absolutely no burn whatsoever. So this is another one of those meads that can really sneak up on you if you're not careful. So it's, I guess, wine strength, if you want to call it that. And there's hardly any aftertaste. What little you do get is that Hungarian oaky flavor that I really like. So good stuff. We need to get this stuff into a bottle here pretty soon. We've got the bottles and the corks. They're going to go into 375s. And be sure to send some to Mead House North and Mead House, Midwest, I guess.
Mead
House, Kansas City, I guess, or whatever. But this is really good. My wife loves it, and she's eager to get it into a bottle and share it with some friends. So that's what I'm drinking here tonight, boys. So, Jeff, what did you put in your glass tonight?
So, third week in a row, I am drinking a beer and a mead from Sap House. And the mead I'm having from Sap House is the strawberry mead that was sent. And I am really liking this. It has, again, it has like that suggestion of sweetness without being too sweet. It has a nice like tart flavor to it that really, really plays nicely on the palate. There's a little bit of kind of that strawberry jamminess. I mean, it's a strawberry mead. so the strawberry flavor is out there. It's very present, but it's not cloyingly sweet by any stretch. There's enough acidity to it, and there's enough balance that it's still relatively light. It drinks like a white wine or a rosé. And yeah, I love that acid. The slightly acidic finish to it really just makes it very tart, refreshing, crisp finish. I like that a lot. In my other glass, I have another Schlafly. This is out of St. Louis. This is a raspberry Hefeweizen. And, the raspberry isn't forward in this. And honestly, neither is the Hefeweizen yeast character. I almost feel like the two are kind of like, what do I want to say? Kind of taming each other out so that you don't get all the banana and clove from the hef and you don't get all the raspberry from the fruit. They kind of tone each other down a little bit. It's still light, refreshing. I really like it. I mean, it's 95 degrees here, and it's so humid it felt like swimming through soup. So anything light like this is definitely a winner, whether it's like today.
Very good. All right. I've been eager to try that strawberry, but I've been kind of standoffish on it a little bit because, I've had strawberry meads in the past, frankly, and have not been overly thrilled with them. They're either way too sweet or hardly any strawberry. So, I'm not don't get me wrong, Ash. I'm not doubting you guys at Sap House. Believe me. I just, strawberries, it's like the coffee thing. And yeah, we're going to be talking about that a little bit later too. But, strawberries is one of those things that's been, for a lot of people, been a difficult thing to work with, If you don't drink it right away, it only lasts like 2 weeks. And after that, it's kind of gone, right? So I'll give that a try, I swear. And maybe I'll sit down maybe this weekend with Raven. We'll have it with the dinner. It almost sounds like it's a little wine. What do you think? Red meat? Jeff?
I don't know. I'd go
pasta?
Pasta, pork. I don't know if I'd go red meat. It's pretty light. Like I said, it's more of a white wine or a rosé.
Okay, something a little lighter. Chicken, even.
Yeah, chicken or pork. Maybe with pasta or some nice light veggies or something like that.
There you go. Good. Yeah, very good. All right. Ryan, you've always got something very interesting in your glass from week to week. I'm eager to find out what it is tonight.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint anybody tonight. I am drinking a Braggot. This is one of mine, and it is a pantry clean-out Braggot. So I had a lot of all kinds of different grains some of them weren't even brewing grains, and I wanted to use them up. So I had oats. I was going to use some oats. I had chia seeds. I thought, these will help bring some body. I'll throw in some chia seeds. And then I had some old dried wild rice. Now, wild rice is, it's mostly like a Minnesota thing. I mean, there's the other, I think the northern states, you can Wisconsin, you can get it, things like that. But it's a northern, it's a north central thing mostly. And, there are, in Canada, I think you get wild rice in Canada too, but there are some breweries that make beer with wild rice, but the kind of wild rice beers that I've seen are darker. And wild rice is a very dark grain. If you've never seen one, I mean, it's almost black.
Yeah.
a lot of the beers that have been made with it are on the dark side. So like a Dunkel, like a wild rice Dunkel, or a wild rice brown ale, things like that. So I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do a little lighter. I wanted to build some body, and I wanted to be, kind of creative, we'll say, with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew though that to get the creaminess of oats, you need to mash it. The steeping doesn't always give you what you want out of oats, just straight steeping it. So I had to buy some stuff. So now again, if you're making a pantry clean out or a freezer clean out, what's your goal? Is it just to clean everything out, or is it you want to craft something and maybe you need to buy something? So I did have to go to the brew shop, and I bought some distiller's malt. And the reason I got distiller's malt is it has lots and lots of enzymes in it. Just, it's able to, it can help when you've got a very adjunct laden mash. Mm-hmm. So I took the distiller's malt and I did a brew in the bag. So first of all, what I did was I took a brew in the bag, bag, and I soaked overnight. I soaked the wild rice. I think I soaked the oats too. The oats, the wild rice, and the chia seeds. And what I wanted to get, was really let them soak. Have you ever soaked chia seeds? You ever seen those like chia seed drinks? I mean, it's almost like gooey. It's so thick. And you can use it to make, if you want to be like if you want to egg substitute, in a baking, you can soak some chia seeds in water and it kind of gets that consistency of like an egg white. That's what I'm talking about, how thick this is. And I thought it might bring a little body. So I soaked the chia seeds, the oats, and the wild rice overnight. And then I put in the distiller's malt and brought it up, and did my mash. So then I added that and I mashed everything all together. And then I think I'll do some hops in. I did some mash hopping and threw some hops in the mash. I love the flavors you can get when you do a mash hop. And I then I took all that out, threw it in the compost heap. And that's a question I think people always ask, hey, what can I do with it? No, you can compost it. And
yeah.
And then I did my boil. And then I took it off the boil. I put the more hops in to do a hop stand. And then I cooled down and I put in orange blossom honey. Got it right up to about 1060. It's still roughly about, it was like a Ryan Braggot. I got about 30 points gravity, 30, well, a little more, 30, 35, let's say 35 points off the grains, probably, 30 points off the honey. So probably like 1065, somewhere in there. And then I pitched I think it was a London yeast, like a London ale yeast or something on it, and let it go and dried, got pretty dry, and then bottled it up, bottle conditioned it with just a little more honey.
So
very, yeah, go ahead, JD.
Well, I was going to say, the only chia seeds that I'm familiar with are the ones that you glue on the little clay donkey and soak in the water. Are we talking the same thing here?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Actually, yes.
All right.
So then I bottled it up, and drinking it, it's got a really crisp finish to it, or a really crisp beer. Lots of hops. Little interesting character, from the yeast. The yeast does have little bits of, some esters come through, and little bits of you're getting kind of the little some of the characters of the yeast are definitely coming through, and then it doesn't have this big creamy heavy mouthfeel that I was expecting. This is actually the biggest surprise for me. I was expecting to be having it feel like like molasses in your mouth almost. Maybe not that bad, but I thought something like molasses in your mouth and chocolate,
What was the
like
ratio?
almost got to it.
What was the ratio of oats to grains? I mean, I'm assuming that's where a lot of that mouthfeel, your expected mouthfeel, would have come from, right?
And I'm being a little overboard here. I wasn't expecting it to be like a 12%.
But you didn't get what you expected, yeah.
Imperial stuff. Well, it was an experiment. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought I'd get a little more mouthfeel, a little more body, but I'm not in no way disappointed. I don't want to say that because it is a very nice braggot. It comes along very well. I think part of it is that it dries out. It dried out a lot better than I thought it was going to. And so, that, and maybe just those binds that happen with the chia seeds and the oat and the wild rice, for that matter, don't withstand the boil, number one, or don't withstand, a fermentation. It just breaks them down. I mean, I kind of, it's not even when we tried that mead, from our buddies down in Georgia, and he was using the aquafaba, and he was, using the water that they had soaked a bunch of chickpeas in.
Right. Yeah.
Even that didn't have, I mean, it had a lot of good body. It had a lot of good body. But now that was the only water he used, I think. I don't think he has any other water, than just the bean water, the old bean water. So, I think it's one of those things that takes a lot. It would take a lot of liquid to really, or a lot of those things to get it going. But just to sum up here, because I'm not trying to tell anybody mistake. I'm saying it turned into a really nice braggot, a little different than I was expecting. So I'm saying this so that if people say, "Oh, I got a handful of wild rice or a handful of oats or a handful of chia seeds," again, just in my experience of that, it might give a little something, but it's definitely not going to be at these big mouthfeel that you're going to get off of a double imperial Russian stout.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
So is this IPA like? Well, you mentioned rather hoppy. Is it along the lines of an IPA? You think, or?
So it's got a ton of hops, but it's not very bitter. I mean, I didn't put a ton of hops in the mash.
So you go more for the flavor than you are the bitter.
Yeah, and then there's this whole trend going on with these 0 IBU IPAs.
Looking for right.
I was looking at a beer menu today, and it had a 0 IBU IPA, and it's just all the hops are, I guess at the hop stand level or wherever they're doing it, or dry hopping or things like that. So it's got a lot of hop flavor. It's got a little more. It's got just a little bit more of that bitter crispness because of the mash hopping, which I really like. It lend well, and what I've found is it does lend well to aging a little more. So you talked about the strawberries, kind of fading away pretty quickly. Sometimes my stuff sits around for a while, and I find that putting some hops in the mash protects that hop flavor from falling out. Yeah. Which definitely, and the bitterness from falling out, which definitely also happens pretty. Hops are pretty susceptible to falling out, but throwing a couple of 1 or 2 ounces in the mash, really does definitely protect it. So it's a good drink. It's a good braggot. I'm enjoying it this evening, and it's definitely a pantry clean out experiment. I'd, it's a good one. And if this were to get submitted to the Iron Bee, I would believe it was a braggot.
There you go. Not a cooked rice, not a cooked rice wine or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Wild
right.
rice wine. And the chia seeds. I've never heard of them being used in an alcoholic beverage. Like I said,
Could be the first.
it could be because, like I said, the only time I've ever been associated with chia seeds is you glue them on the side of a little clay donkey and soak it in water, and and then you got this little grass covered little clay donkey. So anyway, good stuff. Well, hey, I promised I'd talk to you about my new fermenter, and real briefly here. I finally, after talking about it here for probably a couple of months, I ordered the one from Spike Brewing. And I've been back and forth between a couple of manufacturers, and I just liked where Spike's going with all their stuff. They came out here about, I'm going to say maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, with this Flex fermenter. It's not quite the big conicals that you can get. I was going to get one of those, but I thought, man, that's a lot of ferment. I just want to do small batches. Single. I'm not into doing the double batches anymore. I just want to do single batches up to 5 gallons, but I'm thinking more around the 3-gallon mark, even. Because I really don't want to hang on to this stuff forever. When I'm sitting here with a Keyser that has a 4 horsepower tap on it, that's a lot of brew. Okay. Even for my neighbors. But so I got this Flex, from it to Flex Plus. Now this thing is totally customizable, and it comes with a lot. I mean, if you didn't order anything else with it, you can start fermenting the day you get it. It's got all kinds of ports on it and valves, butterfly valve, ball valves. You can get replacement if you want to swap out the butterflies. You can get the ball valves if you wanted. This thing is so cool. What I really liked about it, okay, the one thing that sold me on this thing is I can pressurize this thing to 15 pounds. What does that mean? All right. I think I mentioned last week, the one thing that I was looking forward to is being able to ferment and secondary in one vessel. Okay. You can do that with this thing. Since we're going to be doing some lightweight stuff, 5-6% ABV, maybe 7%, maybe a little higher if we do a stout. But I'm looking for something quick. Okay. I want to get in, let it rest for 3-4 weeks, and get out. Okay, and I can do all of that in this Flex Plus. And when it comes down to transferring, now here's the cool part. Okay, since I went to all kegs, all right, and then there's one drawback. I'll get to that in a minute. But since I went to all kegs, the cool thing about this is I've got 2 options here. I can either carbonate in the fermenter, okay, and transfer, or I can do a pressure transfer without carbonating and carbonate in the keg. So I've got that option. Okay, so what does that mean as far as my kegs go? Well, the only issue with it is, remember I told you I converted all of my kegs to the clear beer system. Okay. Now I still have the tubes that go down inside, the pickup tubes. So I'm going to have to take one of my kegs and put the tube back in and use that as a transfer vessel. Okay, because I need to do this without taking the lid off. And how you do that under pressure is that you have you hook it up to your fermenter, and then hook up CO2 to it. You pressurize the fermenter, obviously. That's going to push the beer into the keg. Well, it's got to fill from the bottom up, because I don't want it all splashing around inside the keg. So because obviously I don't know that I'm going to be able to get all of the oxygen out of the keg. So just to be on the safe side, but it don't matter to me. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I mean, we're not selling this stuff, so it's not that big a deal. So it's not a huge issue. I guess if some people were more pickier than I was, it could be. But the bottom line is, this thing is an awesome fermenter. It's conical shaped on the bottom. The bad, one of the other drawbacks, not a bad thing. The only other drawback is it doesn't have a clean out on the bottom like the big fermenters do. So you got to take it apart, take it over to the sink, lift it up, hose it out, and clean it just like I had to do with my older, my stainless steel tubs, basically. And I got the cooling system, just the insert, because I've got the coolant system already. Just an easy hook up the hoses to the new one. So this thing's really cool. So I'm really looking forward to working with this. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for anybody who's interested. The base price, if you don't add accessories, it's got a ton of accessories that you can get for it. The base price is very, very reasonable. $415 for the Flex Plus, and I believe let me go back here for the other one. The Spike Flex is $265, and that's a little bit different setup than the Flex Plus. You can go to their website. I'll put the link in the show notes. You can read about both of them. Now, contrast that with, say, the conical fermenter. Their 6-gallon conical fermenters start at $600. So a big savings there. I mean, for me doing braggots and occasional mead, this is the perfect setup. Okay, I didn't want to invest a lot of money in one of these big conical unitank fermenters because I knew I just wasn't going to be brewing a lot. And I want to kind of stagger my brewing a little bit. Maybe 1 month it'll be a braggot, and then maybe the next time I brew, maybe just a straight up mead. So the flexibility is there. So that's what I really like. But anyway, so that's what's going on here in Mead House Southwest, or however you want to do it. So on to the Iron B. Jeff and Ryan's got some 4-in-1 on the Iron B. I know we've been a little bit late in talking about it, but hey, this COVID thing really set us back as far as coming up with methods and ways and everything to get this thing going. But it is going to happen. So Jeff, if you want to start us off, Iron B 2021.
Yeah, if you guys are listening to this right now, registration is officially open. You can go to www.themeadhouse.com/IronB2021. That's numbers not spelled out, 2021. And you can register. As long as you are a member of the Keyholders Club on Patreon, I will be shooting you a 4-ounce package of our secret ingredient. Probably 2 or 3 times a week, I'll be taking trips over to the post office to get that done. And we are taking all entries up to 100.
And we'll put that link up in the on the website, themeadhouse.com. So look for it there. We'll also put it in the weekly show notes as well. Ryan, anything else on Iron B?
Hey, let's celebrate this. Well,
Hey! I wish I had some. I wish I had some. I wish I had a little. Well, I got this. How's that?
There we go. Perfect, Adi. That's just perfect. Yeah, just great. So, we thank you guys for hanging out with us. Again, we apologized a couple weeks ago. Don't ask us to apologize again. And we got there. Right? We're a little too jumpy at the beginning to get there, but it's here. It's happening. Please get your stuff in. Please, Jeff's gonna get you the secret ingredient. Secret ingredients coming. please get your braggot, and we'll remind a lot now. You're gonna hear a lot from us on this, but we're excited. Please, any kind of braggot is gonna work. Your secret ingredient, any kind of mead you want to make, it's gonna work. This is the funnest competition in the mead making world, and be a part of it. Please be a part of it. We are so thrilled. And we'll be doing reminders here over the next several weeks and maybe more as we ramp up. So key holders, check your emails. If you are guaranteed a spot. If key holders, if you register now, within the next week here, you are guaranteed a spot. Then we're going to open it up to non-key holders to become key holders. So the way that you can guarantee that you get in this event right now is to become a key holder as quickly as possible, and so that you can register and get make sure you get in. So excited. We'll be talking a lot about this in the upcoming weeks, and we'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, and becoming a key holder is really simple, guys. You just click on the link in the show notes every week at the Patreon site. And plus, there's a little graphic up there on the front page of the website. I think it's over on I believe it's on the left side of the page at the top. If you just click on that, it'll take you right over to the Patreon site. Sign up there. And like I said before, $2 a month is all we're asking for. It helps support the show and keep podcasts free, and helps us put on these competitions as well, too. So, really excited about this IronV 2021. So we've done a pretty good job with it the last few years, and need to continue the tradition. So get your entries in as soon as possible. And again, the link will be in the show notes. We'll look for it. In fact, I'll make it so that you don't miss it. How's that? Hey, so anything else, Jeff? That's it, huh? We're good to go.
That's the long and short of it. All the rules are on the sign up page. You can find it there. We last year was a little bit dicey with COVID happening right after we started accepting entries, and we pulled through. This year, I am hoping for an even more exciting competition, and I think honestly, the secret ingredient could be really interesting. So I am really looking forward to seeing what people come up with.
Good stuff. So on with the Social Club Part 2. We had so much fun with it last week. We decided that we were going to devote the entire show, but we had a couple of business items we had to get out of the way here first. But hey, this is where we try to answer questions from mead makers with no formal expertise other than what we've experienced in our own brew house. So with that, where we left off from last week. Now you heard us talking about, look guys, what was coming up next, and we didn't get to it last week. What was coming up next? All right, this is a simple one-liner from a listener. Thinking about coffee mead. Your thoughts? Really? You really want to ask JD his thoughts on a coffee mead?
I think you need one of those like sad trombone. Wah, wah, wah.
I'll look for one. Yeah, really. No, you don't really want to ask JD about coffee meads. That you don't want my thoughts. We've talked about this in the past. I can't name all the episodes, but there's a good many of them. The three of us did an kind of an experimental coffee mead. Well, each one of us made coffee mead different ways, and 3 different ways. Some with a little bit of success, most probably not with a whole lot of success, and mine just didn't turn out the way I expected. And but I have had some coffee meads in the past, and several of them. One in particular, and I keep harping on Sap House Meadery, but they have probably one of the best coffee meads that I ever tasted. Now, I don't know that they still produce it any longer, but what Ash was able to do with coffee beans, and he gave away a pretty good sized little nugget on the show, on the episode that we talked to him about it. And how did it go, guys? Different grinds for different times.
That's exactly it.
Right? Different grinds for different times. So again, last time, different grinds for different times. Now it's up to you to decipher what you think that means, or go back and look for the episode that we talked. Just go to the search bar down there and look up Ash Fishbein or Sap House Meadery, and it'll come up with a number of episodes, and I think you'll find it in the show notes, where we're talking about the coffee mead. But so that being said, I have not done one since, and I love coffee. I am a coffee aficionado. I get my coffee from a little place in Camden, Maine called Coffee on the Porch, and it is the absolute best coffee. He's a very small roaster, and I mean little tiny roaster. And you can find his coffees at some of the local restaurants in Camden, and he sells online. And when he's out, he's out. I mean, if you go there, I mean, you might find that the one you might think you want to buy might be sold out. And it may be months before he gets back to roasting that particular coffee again. But so coffee meads, yeah, I tried them. The cold steeping thing. I tried just dropping beans into a traditional and seeing how that worked. That didn't work out too well. There's a whole lot of things that go into making a coffee mead, Ryan. One of the things that we found out was the bitterness that you get from coffee, right?
Bitterness is there. Can be part of coffee. It's different. It can, happen a little bit. Different roasts, different ways of preparation can definitely play a little bit a different part in that bitterness. JD, before I forget, I want to say you sent me a coffee. Was it like a liqueur at one point that you made?
Yeah.
It was a mead.
It wasn't a mead. It was actually more like a Kahlua that I had made with coffee. And that was actually made with instant. It's a coffee called Megalodoro. It's a Mexican espresso, and it's made with that, and a very good flavor, by the way. But please go on.
I wonder now if trying to do something like that, trying to make your mead something like that, would be a good way to go for a coffee mead. Trying to make it kind of sweet and creamy, and maybe even a little on the boozy side, And so, the more I thought about this question, because I didn't want to give it its due respect, we'll say here. So I think that would be an interesting way to do it. I think an interesting way to do it would be I'll tell you the basic recipe. Okay, is basically sugar, coffee, orange peel, vanilla, and liquor. Usually a clear liquor. I happen to use vodka. That's how I make my Kahlua. You can duplicate that in a mead very easily. Okay, you've got the sugar, honey, right? So you can make a sweet mead and then back sweeten it. Okay, you need to kind of rack up that sweetness a little bit, and then this Megalodoro coffee. It's an instant coffee, and so a little hot water. Okay, make a solution of it up. Now this is something that you would add in secondary. And this is what you would do this by taste now, because it's easy to go overboard, when you're adding things. Remember, you can add them in, but you can't take them back out. And so it would take a lot, I think, maybe even a whole jar, because you really need that rich coffee flavor to come out. Vanilla beans, easy enough. I mean, you don't have to use vanilla beans. You can use liquid vanilla for all that matter. And orange peel to give it a little bit of that orange citrusy flavor. That's easy to do too. Just zest a few oranges up and let them soak. Put them in the coffee.
as you're steeping your coffee, put the orange peels in with the coffee and let them steep in the hot liquid, and then let it cool off, and then add it to your overly sweet mead. So that's just the base. That's just starting point, Ryan. So
yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Jeff, anything on coffee meads? We've had some in the past, like I said on the show here. That one that we had from Sapa, I don't recall the name of it, but I do remember a discussion that we had, when we were doing these, and this is back when Mississippi was on the show because he got involved as well, I believe. We were talking about the different roasts, and we came upon some information or had somebody on the show, and we discovered that it was more the light to medium roast that actually offered the best coffee flavor, I think.
If I remember right, you in the course of that roast, the darker roast you get, the more, if I remember correctly, the more that encourages the more burnt and bitter flavors.
Right.
And I went and did my kind of tasting around for like local coffee roasters and stuff like that. I did actually find a couple of the light roasts were the most flavorful at the end of the day. Once I got an actual brewed cup of it to try out, I was getting all the secondary flavors like berries and the kind of fruity character in addition to the roast character that really that was the depth that I wanted for my brew.
Yeah. So I mean, I think coffee is a wonderful adjunct. I think it's a cool thing to play with. I don't think the three of us are done with coffee yet.
No.
But it's something that you really need to. It's one of those detail things. Okay, you got to pay attention to detail, and coffee is one of those things that you can really get carried away with. And like I said, if you can put it in, but you can't take it out. And if you get overboard with it, then you got to start over or figure out what to do with it. Or if you're Ryan, mix it with something else. And make a Kahlua out of it if it comes to that, if you have to. But we're certainly not done with coffee. So don't get me wrong. I mean, there's we hoop it up about the coffee thing here at the Mead House. It's kind of a house joke, really. But you gotta listen to all the previous episodes to understand it. So that'll give you cause to go back and re-listen to some episodes if you've forgotten. Anyway, moving on here, guys. No temperature control. Hello, all. I'm wanting to get into making some basic meads, but I currently live in a place with no AC. College. What, dormitories don't have air conditioners? What the hell? But it has some heat in the winter. Great. What's that, a bonfire in the middle of the floor or what? It's in New York, so there is usually some hot days beforehand. I guess my question is if there's a preferred yeast for higher temperatures and if a simpler mead would turn out better. Thanks for all the help. Boy, do we have a yeast for you, Ryan.
Yeah. Search our episodes on Kvike because we say it all twice. If you don't listen the first time, we say it a second time, maybe even a third time. But that's what I would do. I'd go to. There's lots of Kvikes out there now. Omega was the first that I think we knew about who was around there and doing it. But there are definitely a lot of lots of other manufacturers now that do it, even in powdered form. So that's where I'd go. I'd go right to the Kvike, and I wouldn't worry about temperatures rising or falling or going sideways.
No, Jeff, I think you can come up with a pretty darn good tasting yeast. You don't have to have the 110 degree temperatures like we've talked about in the past, right?
Oh, no. And the beautiful thing about Kvike is that you get a very wide functional range with it that, on the lower end of it, this is my feeling as a mead maker with Kvike. I've never actually fermented very much with the low end temperature to know exactly how clean it is. But anecdotally, I've been told it ferments very clean at the lower end of its temperature range. And once you hit about 85 to 90, then you start getting some of the fruity yeast ester flavory things that each of the different strains that Kvike are known for. Way up until, like we've talked about before, 110, 115. It's a little crazy how high that will go. And of course, there are more and more strains being added to the marketplace every month or so here. I mean, you go to the website for Omega or Backyard Biology. They've got just all kinds of different strains with different fruit characters or yeast character to it. So there is a lot to choose from, even with this Kvike, as we're calling it, single strain, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's one of my go-to yeasts. I mean, I basically have 3 yeasts that I use. I have the California Ale, which I absolutely love. I have a British Ale that I use for my cider, or cider, and then the Kvik. I just love what it does to braggots and meads. So that's pretty much my top 3 in my brew house. So good stuff. Good question too. You don't need temperature control if you're using Kvik because it's good from top to bottom. The next one, guys, oak barrel aging. So 2 questions. Brewery, I think he means distillery, is going out of business near me, and they are, well, it could be brewery, I guess. They're selling their 15-gallon white oak barrels used for aging bourbon. $100 a barrel, is that a good price? 2, would using the same barrel for different types of mead be bad, unwanted? Would it mess with flavors? I assume yes, but wanted different opinions. Would I be better off using oak cubes if I wanted to do different types? Okay, starting with the first one. Okay, 15 gallons, that's a lot. Okay, I mean, do you have a 15-gallon fermenter? Because you don't want to ferment, a 5-gallon batch and then, well, I suppose you could. I mean, do 3 5-gallon batches, store them in carboys until you're ready to put them in the barrel. Kind of a lot of work, but I suppose you could do it. The other issue I have is I don't know whether he actually means distillery or brewery. Now, yeah, sometimes breweries will age things in bourbon barrels and then when they're empty, get rid of them. So if they've already been used to distill bourbon, then used to age beer, and then they're getting rid of them, I can't imagine that there's a whole lot left in the barrel itself to give up. This is another episode way back. You can possibly use a search and type in oak barrels. I think that we did have a discussion about, you can only use these barrels so many times, and then the wood just quits. I mean, it's given up everything it's going to give up. They don't last forever. And I'd be a little leery about buying twice used barrels in order to think you're going to get something out of it. Now, you specifically meant, states aging bourbon in. If you're looking for that bourbon essence out of these barrels, you probably won't get it because that's already been aged in the beer that was in it before.
Right. Now, by law, bourbon has to be on first use oak.
Yep.
You basically, the reason you can go to places like MidwestBarrelCo.com and pick up, these massive 53-gallon barrels, $150, $200 is because they have to make a new barrel every time they're making that bourbon.
That's
because
right.
It has use. So,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not, and then in a minute, I'll tell you my experience with barrels, but is that a good price? That's up to you. You need to do some research. That's a little cheap for a 15-gallon, actually, I think. So you want to be careful in buying barrels. The second part of that is, you don't get any guarantees about the barrels, okay? And these barrels leak. They leak like a sieve sometimes, and there's a proper way to rehydrate them and to get them to the point where they don't leak. And a lot of that has to do with the bands that go around it, the wood, the whole. I mean, it's a big thing, okay? It's a lot of effort, into these barrels. The second question he's talking about. Would using the same barrel for different types of mead be bad? And okay, this goes back to what I just said. All right, number one, the barrel was used to age bourbon in. Okay, so at that point, that barrel has given up just about everything it's going to give up for that bourbon out of that wood, the vanillins, caramels, those brown sugars we talk about, or I talk about so often, the butterscotch flavors you get, all that comes out of the barrel. Okay. The second thing is, okay, after the bourbon comes out, they sell those to breweries to age beer. Now we're talking short term. Okay. Now, you've heard us talk about the Sap House Meadery barrel program. Now he's using the big 53-gallon barrels, and they do 2-year programs with them. Okay, but that's about it. Okay, after that, the barrel has pretty much given up everything it's going to give up. Okay, the other thing, and I'll let Jeff talk about this more because there's a science to it as well. They're talking about contact time and volume. My experience with the 5-gallon barrels is that it happens so quick, you're liable to miss it really quick. I did on mine. I thought I had it. I left it in too long, and I was not happy with it at all. And these were barrels out of Texas. I don't remember the whiskey off the top of my head, but had a nice whiskey aroma to it. The barrels were shipped wet, meaning there was still some whiskey in the barrel. 5-gallon barrels are just, it happens too quick. So I have opted to go to using oak cubes, oak staves. We can give you a couple of good places, where to buy your wood from that I've had really good luck with. This mead that I'm drinking here tonight was done with cubes. And not soaked in anything, just raw, unadulterated cubes, toasted cubes. And I've had really good luck getting in really nice. Now, if you want to add that bourbon flavor, add bourbon. Okay, that's my take. Jeff, I don't know if you can speak to the contact time and all of that, volume versus, what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what JD is talking about here is the difference between the total volume of alcohol that you are aging in the barrel and the amount of surface area being presented to that barrel. You got to think in a 53-gallon barrel, the amount of mead or bourbon or whatever you're aging in there that's actually touching wood at any given point, it is a fraction of the 53 gallons of potential alcohol that you could have in there at that time. Once you get into smaller and smaller and smaller barrel sizes, though, like JD and I have, played with the 5-gallon barrels, that's a lot more surface area for the amount of volume of liquid being aged in there. So like right. JD was saying, it gets real easy to overshoot the aging process. For my 2 cents, it's real easy to overshoot the aging and to go a little heavy on the oak in those little 5-gallon guys. Barrels require upkeep and, sweetening and cleaning and this, that, and the other. You got to make sure that they're not leaking. You got to go back with the citric and the sorbate and things like that to make sure that you're not harboring fungus and weird mold and stuff in there between pores. There's just a lot of upkeep and stuff to it. So I'm really partial to these spirals, the cubes, in this case, it's kind of the opposite, where they are taking a very small volume of oak and trying to give us the most surface area they can to contact with the mead, rather than trying to give us, the most mead to have surface area in contact with oak. That probably sounds confusing as hell. I apologize for that. But
Well, no, I mean, I even took one of my 5-gallon barrels and I went out and bought 5 gallons of Evan Williams bourbon and I put it in that one little 5-gallon barrel, thinking that I'll just redo the bourbon in the barrel. Here I can play this sound. Nah, here. Nah. All right, that doesn't work either. Okay, so the Evan Williams went back into the bourbon bottles, and the barrel went downstairs to the trash. So, I think we pretty much answered that. Unless you got something else that you wanted to add to it.
No, we're rehashing old points that if I go any further here.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of using cubes, oak staves, and like I said, we'll put. I got a couple of links I'll throw in the show notes for you, and that I highly recommend. That the Mead House highly recommends, and you can do whatever these. You can soak them, whatever you want to do with them, but they work really great. Ryan, I'm going to throw this next one to you. Leftover lees. What can I do with it? Newbie here, just racked. Of course, I don't know. This might be a Jeff question, but Ryan, he just racked off his brew off the lees and wondering what he can use it for. Can I put it in dough, make bread, or is it mostly dead and won't work for bread? What other ways can I use it? It just seems like a waste to throw it away. What do you think?
Well, I just talked about how I compost a lot of that stuff. I compost it, and that's a good thing to do with it. I know, JD, you lubricate the sewers with yours.
Yeah.
Could you make bread with it? Yeah, I suppose you could make bread with it. If you're talking about using that as the yeast in your dough, I suppose it's possible. Or are you talking about using it as you're substituting some flour or something? Here's the thing: try it out. I mean, you got nothing to lose, or very little to lose, by playing around with the lees.
Yeah.
But you might find that the idea is better than the reality. You got this idea, you want to try it out, and go ahead, give it a shot. But, sometimes trying something once is enough to kill the curiosity.
One of the things that I've done in the past, when I've been working with grains, is using the spent grains in bread. Now, I have made bread with them. I'll add maybe a quarter of a cup of, spent grains to my bread dough and use it that way. One thing that I wanted to do that I never got around to doing was grinding my own flour using spent brewing grains. And that's kind of a process too, because the grains have to be bone dry. And so that means, usually doing, I've got a dehydrator. It's simple enough for me to do, but for most folks who don't have them, laying them out on cookie sheets out in the sun and just letting them air dry. That's another way you can do it. Or just stick them in the oven at a very low temperature. It might take a couple of days, but making bread flour out of spent grains. But as far as the lees go, Jeff, I'm going to throw this into you too. I don't know about even using that for we're talking, there may be some active yeast still in the lees on the bottom. I don't know that you could even use that to supplement the yeast that you would throw in bread. I'm not sure what kind of flavors you would get out of that.
So, have you guys ever tried washing yeast for preserving it or
once?
Yeah,
once.
It's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
I've done it a couple times to try and save Yeah, well, to try and keep a strain of kite going without a lot of crud hanging out with it, and in another case to try. Actually, I do have some lager yeast here that I have been meaning to use for something, so I'll have to revisit that. But that's another point. I've done that a couple times, and it's a pain in the ass. It's when you try to separate the still living yeast from the trub, the crud, the dead, or essentially like useless stuff, you're getting maybe a quarter that's still viable yeast. A lot of that is not. And, I suppose if you really wanted to stick to the whole, like, no chemical approach to meat making kind of a thing, you could take all that trub and you could, boil it a little bit and make your own, like, cut rate fermade kind of a thing. Yeah. Even though I have a lot of the micro, what do they call them? The additional, vitamins and minerals that come along with just the autolyzed yeast, because it's essentially all you've got left is yeast that's dead and kind of breaking down.
Yeah.
You could use it for that. There's not really much else you could use it for. And you could put it in bread, but it's not going to work as well as bread yeast.
No.
The thing we need to remember about, bread yeast, the same way that we have had literally thousands of years to refine our wine yeasts to make a tasty wine. We've been refining bread yeast for, hundreds, if not thousands of years to basically fart out a lot of carbon dioxide and make big, air pockets in our bread.
Yeah.
They are the same species, but they are very different specializations. It's kind of like, like a show dog versus a working dog.
Yeah. There you go. There's one other use that Ryan could have alluded to, but he didn't. The compost pile.
That's totally viable too. Yes,
might make your vegetables grow better. I don't know. Anyway, okay, moving on here. What do you guys like to use for cleaner sanitizer? Off the top, me, PBW, PBW, whatever the hell it's called. It's a the beer cleaner. I use it for all my equipment, my beer lines, the whole 9 yards. I use it to clean out my fermenters. Do not use a film like your kitchen, dish soap, okay, or anything like that, because it leaves a film, and you'll work your ass off trying to get rid of it. Use PBW. Another one I think it works well is TSP, I think. And then I use Star San only because I got a crap load of it. Ryan, what do you use for cleaners and sanitizer?
Before we get into that, I was just going to say that I do have, I did put all of my tube and my leaf in my impatient. I got a little place out front where I have a bunch of impatient flowers.
Yeah.
And they have been going just crazy. So I would say that it does, the plants do like it. They absolutely like it. All right. So what do I like to use?
Yeah, cleaners and sanitizers.
Yeah, there's two manufacturers that I like equally because they have supported the Iron Bee equally. One is 5 Star. So 5 Star, makes the PBW, the Star San, all that good stuff. The other one is Craftmeister. Craftmeister, they make different alkaline washes and oxygen washes. iodophores, and even it's like a Star San, but it's non-foaming. So it doesn't. It's the same bottle design, the same concept, but it's non-foaming. Those work great. So the other thing that I really do like about Craftmeister is they have keg and carboy cleaning tablets. And sometimes instead of having to get out your measuring spoon, you just drop a tablet or two in, and you've got enough stuff in there to get out all of the all the buildup and everything else. So I've used a lot. I've used a lot of those cleaners. I'll tell you this. We talked about. I think I went on a tangent, Jeff, talking about the poem, the road less traveled. But again, the takeaway from that poem is just pick something and do it. It's, at the end, probably not going to matter. Well, here's the thing: whether you use the oxygen wash or the alkaline wash, for most of what you're doing, it's not going to matter. The alkaline wash cleans kettles, kegs, fermenters. Use it on glass, plastic, and stainless. The oxygen wash cleans kettles, kegs, and fermenters. It's so just pick what you like, and pick what is available to you, and just have a good method. Just have a good method.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be fine.
I've got this little gizmo. I got to look into the tablets, because every time I clean kegs, I got to get out. I take my kegs apart. Of course, there's not much to doing that now since I use the clear beer. It's just a matter of undoing the hose from the top of the input thing, or the output, just disconnecting the hose, just pull the hose off. It's that simple. But then I got this little drill mounted thing. It spins around. It's got these like felt pads with a little scrubber on the end of it. And you put it on a drill, and I put it, I put PBW and water in my keg, and I use that to spin the drill around, and it does a pretty good job cleaning. I take a sponge and clean the top part of the keg out and everything. So I got to look into those tablets and see what those are all about. But Jeff, what do you use for cleaners and sanitizers?
Predominantly, I'm a 5-star kind of guy. PBW works great. Star San works great. And the major advantage I've found to it is that I know if I run out of one, if I need a cleaner or I need a sanitizer, I can go not only to my regular homebrew store, but to any homebrew store in the metro, and they'll have that. It's, I know it's going to work. That said, I have tried a bunch of other stuff, like the Craftmeister's, those like keg and carboy tablets. Brilliant. Why hadn't somebody thought of that faster? And I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but I think 5-star is coming out with a similar PBW like dosage tablet thing of their own soon awesome. Too. So
good stuff.
Clearly, it was a good idea. And like Ryan was saying, I don't think it's necessarily brand loyalty so much as you find something that is going to work for you and you keep using it. So I really like 5-star because I know it's reliable. I know I can trust especially the sanitizer. I don't want to mess around with the sanitizer that I have to question whether this sulfite crystal stuff gonna keep for a month or 2 months. Is it still good? I don't want to take chances with that. I feel like I can trust Star San relatively easily enough for it to be like kind of a go-to. And if I've got, iodophore or something along those lines, I'll try that instead. But I just kind of have the few that I know work and I've tried and played with before, but the field is wide.
I keep a bottle of iodophor on hand. If you go back in some of the early episodes of the Mead House, you'll hear back when Mississippi Chris was when Mississippi was a surgeon, and he talked about we talked about this subject one night, I think in some detail, and he recommended switching out every 6 months or so. Changing sanitizers because sometimes bacteria will, like humans, they'll become immune to certain remedies and find another way to accomplish their goal. But I don't know that that's so much a practice anymore. I mean, I don't do that anymore. I used to. I would switch between Star San and iodophor. But if you're brewing like every other day, maybe that's something you want to look into. But I mean, I may be brewing once a month now, with the single fermenter, and so I don't know that you'd really need to switch out. But either way, good subject matter, guys. This is Ryan. I'm gonna throw in this one your way. This came from somebody obviously listening to the show. You guys talk about repitching yeast. Actually, let's go with Jeff on this because we just got through talking about this. Actually, you guys talk about repitching yeast. What is it, and how do you do it, Jeff?
If I'm going to start talking, I should really take myself off.
I'm going to get you an anti-mute button.
Just get one of those tones that, something that plays an annoying tone every time I'm on mute, so that way I know before I start going off on a long-winded.
How about the alarm?
Okay, that's enough.
How's that?
Yeah, that's enough.
Okay.
So, like I was saying to no one by myself here, there's a few different approaches to this. And, I'm not saying any one of them is more or less valid, but the most basic way you can do this is, say you're done with primary for a beer, a mead, whatever, and you decide you want to ferment something on the same yeast. Mm-hmm. The real easy thing to do is mix up your next batch, pour right on the lees the stuff you finished. Mm-hmm. The upshot to that is that you've already got a functional, healthy colony right there you're pouring into. Mm-hmm. It should take off with very little effort. The downside is you're also putting it onto lees. And the lees are kind of the dead yeast that the other yeast might cannibalize, or you can kind of get a buildup of that cake of yeast at the bottom, which that can lead to some nasty off flavors. It's not the kind of thing you want to do time after time after time, again and again. But for a one-off thing, I know plenty of people that have done, a beer and then right away another beer and had no problems with it whatsoever. Yeah. The more, I guess, the more careful way to do this is to do what I was alluding to before, which is washing your yeast. And basically, that term is not far off from what you're actually doing. You take distilled water, you take your yeast shrub or the yeast cake or whatever, and basically you dilute that into with the distilled water into a sanitized container, like a 1 gallon carboy, something like that. And you let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. The idea here is that you're going to get a kind of a 3 different layer separation real quick, where you will have a dark yeasty layer, you will have a light yeasty layer, and you will have a kind of hazy liquid layer. You let this sit for a little bit, and the long and short of it is, what you're trying to do is you're trying to pour off that hazy liquid and just get rid of it, because that's just liquid, a little bit of gunk left over, and you're trying to save that light yeasty the light yeasty layer, because that is the living, the viable yeast.
Mm-hmm.
And then get rid of the dark yeasty layer, because that's the dead stuff. That's the stuff that's not going to do you any good unless you're fertilizing your impatiens.
Ryan, looking at this question again, I mean, I'm guessing that's what he was talking about, because he asked, what is it and how do you do it? But you could also turn this around the other way and think, okay, you guys talk about repitching yeast. Repitching, like, in other words, like there was an issue with the first time you pitched, so now you have to repitch. So
I mean, how do I pitch yeast? High and inside, just like Nolan Ryan and Randy Johnson used to pitch. No, repitch.
Curveball, yeah,
right,
repitch. Yeah, how do you repitch a curveball?
Yeah, so I think that Jeff, definitely covered really well on how to repitch a yeast that you've used for another batch. And I've talked about that. I made a wine, and then I made a cider right on top of that leaf, or pretty much right on top of the leaf. And it was really great. I mean, I love doing it. I thought it was really fun, and it turned out really well. So yeah, I mean, I reused a yeast that had come off a wine batch, in a cider batch. So you definitely can do that. But yeah, I think what the listener might also mean, and he may have meant also, when somebody says, "Oh, my yeast didn't get me where I wanted to go," or fermentation stopped, or fermentation is stuck.
Stuck, yeah.
What should I do? Well, in those cases, sometimes people will say, "Oh, I had to repitch a yeast." Oftentimes we talk about using workhorses in that situation. If we're talking mead, typically they use like EC 1118, something like that. That is a workhorse, and it's you get a stuck fermentation with maybe a more finicky yeast. You can blast right through it, with like an 1118. Mm-hmm. So now that, what is it? Yeah. If I'm thinking about the question this way, what is it? It's, putting more yeast on a stuck fermentation. And how do you do it? Well, the best way that I've found to do it, especially if there's already some fermentation that's taken place, is you build a starter. So you start off,
right? Yeah.
A little bit of rehydrate it, a little bit of water. Maybe a little Go Firm. Just get it nice and happy and healthy, and then start building a starter. I like sanitized ladle can work well if you've got like a big mouth or a bucket that you're fermenting in. And you maybe draw a little bit of that out and put that in with the yeast, so the yeast is a little acclimated to it. And, you do that a little bit. So you build maybe a liter starter or something like that. And then you can pitch that in. And now you've got a really healthy, vigorous starter of like a workhorse, of a workhorse yeast that should be able to bust through a stuck fermentation. If you're, trying to get that a little bit lower.
Good stuff. We've got time. We might have time for two more. Let's tackle this one. What to do with a subpar blueberry mead? I just bottled some blueberry and a tart cherry mead. The cherry is good and is refreshingly tart and sweet. Sounds amazing. But the blueberry is weak in flavor and has an aggressive color. I'm not quite sure what he means by that. I want to let it age a while, but if it doesn't improve like I want, I need to use it. So I'm thinking, let's not deal with the aggressive color, because I don't know that color really has anything to do with flavor. I mean, I've tasted some really good meads that really the color wasn't I mean, it's not something you want to paint the kitchen walls with. You know what I mean? But I think he's talking about weak flavor here. All right. I mean, there's a couple of things that you can go the Ryan route and mix it in with something else. Okay. Build another blueberry mead that's strong in flavor, blend the two, blend it with the cherry mead. I mean, wherever you want to go with it, Jeff, what would you suggest that he do with his blueberry mead, weak in flavor?
If you got a mead that's weak in flavor, and we're looking at blending, my initial impulse is to say, okay, well, you get something that comes out a little too sweet, a little too saccharine. A weak in flavor mead can kind of balance that out a little bit. Another thing we could think about, I don't know about all homebrew stores, but I know a couple around here will also sell vinegar mothers. If you're not going to drink it, you might as well make a tasty vinegar out of it.
Oh, there you go.
Salad, cooking, what have you. I mean, you get fancy with this stuff. Even if you didn't like it as a mead, you might like it as vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
The third solution is the solution I usually take, which is drink it when no one else is home.
Yeah.
Because it's awful.
Yeah. Give it to your neighbors. If you got neighbors like I got, they don't care what it tastes like as long as the ABV is up there. You know what I mean? Come on, put it on ice in a tumbler and a straw. They're happy as a lark. They don't give a crap what it tastes like, as long as the ABV is above 7%. You know what I mean? Ryan, what would you do with a weak flavored blueberry mead that has an aggressive color?
A weak flavor. Well, it reminds me of old office coffee.
Yeah.
Weak flavor.
Yeah, and aggressive color too, right?
Aggressive color, absolutely. So you could always. The thing is here, like we talked about last week, is determine how much effort you want to put into it, and determine what's the easiest solution. I mentioned that I had a keg of a ginger lime mead that was pressurized, coming off the hose, and just didn't have enough lime in it. And what was I going to do with it? Well, the easiest solution was to cut up some limes, and when you filled up a glass of mead, you just would squeeze a lime wedge into it and go on your merry way.
There you go. Yeah.
So now think about what you're saying here. You can blend, you can end up like Ryan blending, right? I mean, you start with a 1 gallon batch, and by the time you blended it into something that you thought was okay, you had 10 gallons of it or 15 gallons of it, so that's a tall order. But the other thing you can do is like I said, think about some other things. You could buy like an amaretti flavor,
mm-hmm.
and put some amaretti flavor in there if you want it. Or like I said, you could use it as I don't know how strong it is, but use it as a mixer in a cocktail. Put a shot of gin in there and a sprig of rosemary and a squeeze of lime and a couple of ice cubes and have a nice cocktail. I mean, Jeff, I think your idea on vinegar is great, but I don't know how big his batch is, and I don't know if he wants 10 gallons of blueberry vinegar.
This is true. 10 gallons of blueberry vinegar is going to put you in vinegar for.
It's the spirit of discussion.
Life,
yeah, it's the spirit of the discussion. I mean, Christmas presents.
I mean, or you could try to do some or you could try to go into post fermentation things and drop an oak stick in there, a vanilla bean, a cinnamon stick, maybe some dry hops, not all of those things at once, or some orange peel or something. And you could try to do it. Might not be exactly what you wanted to, what you envisioned it in being, but you might come up with something really nice. Maybe some blueberry, vanilla, and oak. That sounds like it could be okay.
Buck it up a little bit, yeah.
So let's go back to some of the principle of the thing, though, is determine how much you wanted, how much more time, money, and effort you want to put into it, and what the upside is coming out. For me, the simplest thing to do is cut up some limes and squeeze a lime wedge in there, and you're off on your merry way. And again, if you think, hey, this is close, I just want to feel a little bit better, a little more, you can decide what you want to do here with it. Like I said, we've talked about 8 or 10 different options that you've got, and I just say, make sure you're not putting a dollar's worth of time and effort into a dime's quality meat.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind, and good luck to you.
There you go. And I think we're going to drop it right there for the night. Good stuff, guys. And we got a ton of really good questions. In fact, another coffee one that we'll tackle again next week. But tons of good questions coming up. And so looking forward to that. We're going to leave it right there for the night, like I said. So, hey, thanks for hanging out with us in this episode. And seriously, if you want to get on the show, it's really, really easy. All you got to do is get a hold of us. You can do that by just emailing us at info@themeathouse.com, or send us a message on the Facebook deal or Twitter thing, both at The Meat House. And we'll be glad to talk to you, set up a date, and have you on and talk to you about your brewing projects and what you got going. It's real simple. We'd rather hear from our listeners, to find out what they're doing at home, what they've been making, and, see what they've got, if they've got any advice for other homemade makers out there. So in the meantime, happy mead making. That's going to be it for this episode. Ryan, flip the lights off. Jeff, slam the door shut. And we'll see you next week for episode number 2. I can't believe we're 208 episodes. It was just a couple of weeks ago we were like 200, weren't we? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like about 8 weeks ago.
8 weeks ago. Time is flying by. 208 episodes in the can. Hey, well, thanks for joining us. Next week, episode 208 here at the house. Hey, we're gone.